This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey now, welcome to a wonderful Wednesday edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Michael Remis here in the host chair for Hustler. He's taking some well-deserved time off at the RBC Canadian Open, taking the Blue Jays game. Tomorrow he'll be back. Next week, going to be joined by Connor Hrabchak in just a second. Pumped to be here. Game one of the Stanley Cup Final goes tonight. CFL season kicks off tomorrow, although no Bombers in action. Their home opener is next week. And if you missed it yesterday, CFL 110 with Hustler and Jeff Hamilton doing many. Yesterday was the prediction show. The 1 week before, the season storyline show. So make sure you're checking out CFL 110 here on our YouTube channel or on your podcast provider. CFL underway. Jets, NHL off-season hot stove. We've had some signings. We're signing today around the NHL. The Combine taking place. We're going to do some draft preview on tomorrow's show. But lots going on around the NHL, and we'll get to our Assiniboia Downs picks, some Coolbet Lines as well. Shout out, before we bring in Connor, shout out to all the sponsors who make this show happen. Without them, we would not be here doing this right now, talking to you. So we got Rollies Transfer, St. Vital Dental, Canadian Club, Manitoba Battery, Ben Moss Jewelers, Prairie Toyota Dealers, Royal Sports, Boston Pizza, Little Brown Jug, Breezy Bend, Winnipeg Gold Eyes, and Assiniboia Downs. Of course, Coolbet as well. We'll be doing the Assiniboia Downs picks at the end. I got to make mine. Hustler, firming lead, and Gold Eyes. We have Gold Eyes night, June 19. That is just over, over 2 weeks away. And we've got under 20 tickets left if you want to join us on the patio. So winnipegsportstalk.com at the top, or you click the three lines on mobile or bring up the menu. Click Gold Eyes Night. You can get a ticket there, $20 on the patio. Great view, great times. I can't wait to see everyone there. All right, let's bring him in. Connor Hrabchak. Connor, thanks for filling in for me last week. Now it's Hustler's turn. Taking some time off. What's going on, Connor? How you doing?
I'm doing well, Remo. I'm looking forward to the beginning of the Stanley Cup Finals tonight. It feels like it's been weeks, months since the last time we've watched hockey. But yeah, this is going to be fun. Maybe the rest is a good thing. You know, the waiting to start the finals is tough, obviously, but these two teams, who I think are both better this year than they were last year, are now fully rested going into a Stanley Cup Final. So if you're looking for a silver lining on all this waiting we've done for the finals to start, maybe that's it. And I'm looking forward to game one tonight.
Yeah, what has everyone out there been doing waiting for the Stanley Cup Final to start? Because it was last Thursday when the matchup was set, Dallas losing at home, Jake Ottinger pulled, Edmonton advances, Stanley Cup Final rematch. What have you been doing? Have you been watching some movies or TV shows at night, watching baseball, getting outside? A number of options here as it was end of May into June. Connor, anything you've been up to since you were on the show last Thursday, Friday? What have you been doing?
Yes, so Remis, you know the new Mission Impossible movie that's coming out, that's in theaters right now?
Yes.
The Final Reckoning or whatever it's called?
Yes.
I had never watched a Mission Impossible movie.
Wow.
So I've been watching them all. And this is what I've been doing with my time off, is I've been watching the Mission Impossible movies. Right now I'm my next one to watch is Rogue Nation, and then I have Fallout, and then I have the last two. So I've been watching Mission Impossible. That's what I've been doing. What have you been up to?
Wow. Well, I took some time off, so that was good. And working a bit at night, editing some of these clips that you've seen on our Instagram. But I've been watching baseball the last couple nights. I'm in a couple fantasy leagues. This Dodgers Mets series late at night, I've been putting on. The games have been very close, going to extras. Oh, and I've been watching TV, catching up. Not a movie. I did see Mission Impossible 2 when it came out. Was a huge deal. Great soundtrack.
Nice.
But I don't think I've seen past 3. I think I saw 3. Was that Ghost Protocol? That 3?
I just watched that one the other night. That's where I'm at.
Okay.
So don't spoil anything after that. I guess you haven't watched it.
I haven't seen any after that. I watched the second one. I was so fired up for the second one. I can't keep track. John Wick, I've never seen. I could do a list here of movies I haven't seen, but I've been watching The Rehearsal the last couple nights. That's on HBO. Nathan Fielder. Great show. But it's here. Stanley Cup Final. You pumped for this rematch, Connor? You ready for the rematch, or are you tired of these teams?
I'm pumped for the rematch. I know some people, are rolling their eyes because it's the same two teams and whatever the case might be, which fair enough. I think I said it off the top. I think both of these teams right now are better than they were last year. I think Florida's top 9 is like an all-star team's top 9. The Edmonton Oilers, yes, they just lost Zach Hyman, but with Matthias Ekholm coming back, I think this is the best supporting cast that Connor McDavid has had in his entire career. And going into the finals, there's really no better chance for McDavid that he's had to go into a finals than this year, at least on paper. Last year, they were 1 goal away in Game 7, of course, but on paper, their defense core looks incredible. They're getting contributions up and down the lineup in the forward core as well. So I think if you're an Oilers fan or you're cheering for the Oilers, you should feel pretty good about what your team looks like going into these finals. And if you're Florida, you as well. Your third line of Marchand, Lundell, Luosterainen is playing like the best third line in hockey right now. And then you have Barkov to shut down McDavid. So there's a lot of star power. I'm taking the glass half full approach with the rest. We've been waiting so long for these two teams to play. I think these teams are going to be rested. They're going to be healthy going into these finals. And I'm excited because I think both of these teams are better than they were at this time last year.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think Edmonton had a weird series last year where they get down 3-0, but you knew that was a really good team. And that's not and you knew it was a series that could go 7 games. It just went 7 games in a bit of a different way than you would normally think, with the Panthers winning 3 and Edmonton answering back with 3 of their own, and Florida winning in a very tight Game 7. So I want to see Connor, I don't know if you've got a pick or who you want to win. There's some Winnipeg connections on Florida. Paul LaPolice, who's come up on this show quite a bit. Dmitry Kulikov, former Jet. Nate Schmidt, former Jet. And Edmonton does have Evander Kane, Mark Stewart behind the bench. I don't know where you're leaning, but personally, I'm ready to see Connor McDavid lift the cup. So much talk about him as the greatest player. I want to see great players do great things. And I know there's going to be people in the chat here or Winnipeg fans who are scarred by the Oilers, from what they did to the Jets in the 80s. But that was a long time ago. And sure, let's end. I don't want to hear any more about the Stanley Cup drought. I want to see great players do great things. Edmonton, they're my pick, probably going 7 games.
Yeah, my prediction is also Oilers in 7. And again, I feel like I say this every time we talk about the Edmonton Oilers here on the show, but if you are a Jets 1.0 fan, you're around for that era, I totally understand not cheering for the Edmonton Oilers. That was the team that scarred the Jets 1.0. I'm not of that generation. I don't have any ill will towards the Edmonton Oilers. The only memory for me, Jets versus Oilers, is sweeping them in the bubble, right? And Connor McDavid. I mean, it was so much fun cheering for him at the Four Nations final, having him on my favorite team, cheering for Canada in that game against both games against the U.S. and against Finland and Sweden, of course. But I'm cheering for the Oilers. They're my pick. I think they're getting contributions from players not named Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl right now, and I think that's maybe contributing to them being the best version of themselves. And the reason they've ripped through the Western Conference outside of those first 2 games against LA. So I'm a big Connor McDavid fan. He hasn't beat the Jets in the playoffs yet, so I don't hate him at this very moment. And he's responsible for one of the best hockey memories of my life, at least with the Four Nations final goal. So I'm cheering for Connor McDavid. Great player, greatest player of my generation. I want to see him win a Stanley Cup. It's been too long, and he's already like 28. So if he doesn't win one this year, I'm not saying his career is over, his chances of winning a cup are over, but we got to start getting some cups here if we want to, see our great players in this league win Stanley Cup. So I'm cheering for McDavid to get it done.
Yeah, we talked about it this week. Gretzky losing and then coming back the next year and winning. Crosby as well against the Red Wings, and now it's McDavid's turn against the Panthers. Zach Hyman injury, I think, is very huge for Edmonton, but as you mentioned, they have the depth scoring this year, which they did not have last year. For people who've come in our chat saying, what's different about the Oilers this year? It's been media day, a lot of players, coaches talking to the media, giving their thoughts. There's only so much you can do, but however, there was a media session today, and Jesse Pollock of Bar Down, Winnipegger, had to get in and ask Paul LaPolice, last year went viral for saying right after he won the cup that he wanted the Jets to win this year. The Jets did not win, but shout out to Jesse, who asked Paul LaPolice, okay, what did you think of the Jets this year, of their season and playoffs? And here's Coach Paul LaPolice.
Hey, Paul, congratulations on making it to another Stanley Cup Final. Last year, after winning the Cup, you had a message for Winnipeg Jets fans and the team. You were saying that your hope is that the Jets get to the Stanley Cup. They didn't quite make it this year. I'm just wondering if you have any words for the Jets, their fans, and what you think they need to do to get over the hump.
Yeah, get rid of the last coach was the right thing to do. Won a President's Trophy. I cheer for three teams, basically. I cheer for the Vancouver Canucks because of Jim Rutherford. I cheer for the Winnipeg Jets because of Winnipeg. And I was cheering for the Dallas Stars for Beat DeBoer. But if you put everything into this, and you're not cheering for the other team, you're cheering for your own team. But if you're going to lose, or lose to one of those three groups, that's kind of the idea. Now, my cheering for the team hasn't done them much good, it seems. But they've just got the right story in Winnipeg for the National Hockey League and what's right about the game. Saw it in the connection with what Mark Scheifele did to play in that game, the connection to his brothers. But that's not just a one-off. That starts at the top of that organization. And it fits very well with the fan base there. They won the President's Trophy, and I think the Florida Panthers did a couple of years before they got to the final, so they're right there.
There's Florida Panthers head coach Paul LaPolice on the Winnipeg Jets, on Mark Scheifele and Connor. We were on this show, or at least you and Hustle were ripping him for not going in the handshake line, but I got to give him props here, giving a nice shout out to Winnipeg Jets, shout out to Mark Scheifele, and when I don't know if he's going to go in the Hockey Hall of Fame or not. He's certainly up there in all-time coaching records, but when his career ends, you're going to look at him, and I think it didn't end the best way, but I think he certainly brought a lot to the Winnipeg Jets organization during his time here.
Yeah, so Paul LaPolice is back in the good books.
Back in the good books. Yeah. Last week, ripping him for pulling a Larry David and saying not going to go in the handshake line. This week, praise the Winnipeg Jets, back in the good books.
Yes, absolutely. And if Paul LaPolice can win another Stanley Cup, you got to have that Hall of Fame conversation. He's been around the league so long. I think he's the losingest head coach in NHL history. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think if you're a Jets fan that doesn't really care if the Edmonton Oilers are winning the Stanley Cup this year, you have both sides covered. You're either watching Connor McDavid do great things for the Edmonton Oilers, or you're watching a former Jets head coach who loves Winnipeg or speaks highly of his time in Winnipeg at least, and he'll win his second Stanley Cup. So win-win all around if that's the case. But yeah, Paul LaPolice, nice to hear that he still has that love for Winnipeg. Absolutely, because of the way things ended here. You never know. And speaks very highly of Winnipeg. Still wants them to win the next Stanley Cup. I mean, he did say the next Stanley Cup, Remo, if the Panthers win, maybe then it's just kicking the can down the road. They're going to win the next Stanley Cup. That's not the Florida Panthers. So maybe that's another reason to root for Florida.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll tune in tonight. One thing they've been doing, Connor, is, the NHL awards used to be this ceremony. I was there last year. Me and Hustler, the only people in the building laughing at host Matt Friend's jokes. Bit of a different approach this year. They're doing surprise award handouts, like a flash mob, giving one to Barkov for the Selke and Nikita Kucherov. Not a lot of talk of him for the Hart Trophy, but awarded the Ted Lindsay Award, surprised by his teammates, led the NHL with 121 points, very quietly won the Art Ross. You didn't hear his name for Hart Trophy, but if you want to know who the players think is the most outstanding player in the NHL, their vote, Nikita Kucherov. What do you think of Kucherov's season and winning the Ted Lindsay?
Yeah, it's not shocking to me, at least. His name wasn't there for the Hart per se, and maybe that's why it's a little shocking for some people. I mean, his name was in and around the Hart, and maybe not as a winner, but as someone who might finish third or fourth. But I'm not shocked to see the Art Ross winner get that acclaim from his peers. At least when you're going up against the Tampa Bay Lightning, you might have a night where Nikita Kucherov just carves you on the penalty kill and he ends with 4 points. So from a player's perspective, I could see that they thought Nikita Kucherov had the best season in the NHL. When it comes to most valuable, that's a pretty different conversation when you're looking at, Connor Hrabchak, Nathan MacKinnon, whoever the Hart winner might end up being, Leon Draisaitl. But I do think that for most outstanding player and for the players going up against Nikita Kucherov, I could see how they came to that decision. So I was a little shocked because, again, he's not going to win the Hart, but not all that shocking because he did win the Art Ross, and I could see that players view points as the ultimate goal, right?
To have the ultimate goal, sure. Not the Stanley Cup, the ultimate goal, because you mentioned Connor
Right.
McDavid, not up for any individual awards this year. But hey, who cares about individual awards? You can have I have the poster here, the ultimate goal. Picture the Stanley Cup on my wall growing up. But in terms of other NHL news, free agent season, a lot of rumors. The general managers, they're not meeting at the draft this year. They're meeting at the Combine. That took place this week, so a lot of chatter among insiders. People are coming out with, you have free agent boards, trade boards. We did have a signing today, pending UFA Brock Nelson. We're wondering, where is he going to sign? A lot of talk about him back around the trade deadline. Did not accept a trade to Winnipeg. Went to Colorado. Did not have a great playoffs, but Colorado extending him on a 3-year contract, $7.5 million AAV for the 34-year-old center. So we're going to be seeing a lot of Brock Nelson here in the Central Division. What do you think of the move from Colorado?
Yeah, so I think this move can be viewed in a few different ways. The trade itself to get Brock Nelson for the Colorado Avalanche, where they gave up Cal Ritchie and a first, which was a massive haul for a rental, now looks a little bit better because you didn't just get Brock Nelson for 17 regular season games and 1 playoff series or whatever the final numbers ended up being, but now you extend him. Now you have him here for a little bit longer. So you're okay with giving up Cal Ritchie and a first because Brock Nelson's going to be here for the next 3 years contributing to a winning team. On the flip side, you pay Brock Nelson $7.5 million in AAV. You also traded for Charlie Coyle at the deadline, who's making $5.2 million in cap next year. 7.5 plus 5.2, that's pretty close to 12 million, or it's over 12 million that Mikko Rantanen got paid by the Dallas Stars. So you trade away Mikko Rantanen in this because you don't want to pay that contract. You bring back Brock Nelson and Charlie Coyle. And yes, are you a deeper team with those two players? Sure. But we're seeing in the Stanley Cup playoffs that stars and star power are winning out. So in one sense, it's like, okay, you made the deal for Brock Nelson, you paid a ton, and that you made that worth it because you signed him and you extended him. But on the flip side, it's like, why didn't you just pay Mikko Rantanen $12 million in the first place? I'd rather have Mikko Rantanen at $12 million for the next 8 years than Charlie Coyle at $5 million and Brock Nelson at $7.5 million. Remis, I don't know about you. That's the only puzzling part of this extension to me.
Yeah, this is a team that we said was too top heavy. They've spread it out a bit more. They got their 2C, and you haven't even mentioned Marty Necas, who was name dropped in Nick Kiprios's trade list. Like, they all got crazy names here. They all got crazy names now in his list. So I'm curious what happens there. I didn't mind the move from Colorado. You still have Necas. You had him for the past year. You have him for next year. We'll see what happens with them. But Colorado, as long as they have McKinnon and Makar, that's not a team that's going away. They fixed their goalie situation. I like a lot of their moves, and I'm sure Brock Nelson, with a full year as an Avalanche, will have a much better season than he did in the playoffs. But how will this contract age? 34 now. You're getting up there. We'll be evaluating this one, I think, when it comes to deadline rentals moving forward.
I will also say, Remis, just looking at the other teams contending in the Central, Colorado is one of those teams. Dallas is the other one. Colorado, after this deal, has $1.2 million in cap space with 19 players signed. So they either got to move some money or something, because Jonathan Drouin is a UFA. He's probably done in Colorado. They've got Sam Malinsky, who's an RFA. Ryan Lindgren is a UFA. Like, they've got players to sign that they won't be able to because there's $1.2 million in cap space there. And they have to sign some more players. Like, I guess you could roster a 19-man team, but no team wants to do that. And then the Dallas Stars, you guys talked about it the other day when Hustler had Gavin Spittle on. They were talking, they have like roughly $4.5 to $5 million in cap space with Jamie Benn, Matt Duchene, Mikhail Granlund, all needing new contracts. And you look at the Winnipeg Jets, who have a lot of players to sign in Nikolai Ehlers, Velarde, Sandberg, Barron, but they have $26 million in cap space to do it. They're not nearly as cap strapped as these other teams are. So it's really interesting, like kind of the different team building. And you see this a lot more in the NHL these days with teams that are literally right up to the cap, spending every single last dollar they can. And Colorado is clearly one of those teams with $1.2 million left with 4 roster spots still to fill.
Yeah, we've got our ear to the ground. It's hot stove season, and Dallas, a team people are watching. Jason Robertson's name being floated out in trade rumors. Imagine they would get quite a haul for him, as they're right up against the cap with many players to sign, and the Jets do have some room. And if they don't sign Nikolai Ehlers, how will they utilize that cap space? Will they plug up that hole at second line center that we've been talking about for so long? One thing with the Jets, Hustler and I talked about this yesterday. I don't know where you land, but if they were to make a trade, do you think are they going to be trading any roster players, or are they just looking at picks and prospects at this point?
I think they'd look at picks and prospects. Usually when you're trading roster players for a team that just won the President's Trophy, I should add that caveat in there, it's usually to make money work. Like Alex Iafallo was on trade boards at the deadline because it was like, well, the Jets could use maybe his extra $4 million in a big deal and get even more cap space. So usually you see roster players moved to kind of weaponize cap space. I don't see the Winnipeg Jets doing that. And I do see them, moving picks and prospects because the window is now. I've talked about this many times. You guys have talked about this as well. Connor Hrabchak and Mark Scheifele already on the wrong side of 30. You got Kyle Connor's contract coming up next offseason. He'll probably be extended this offseason if he's extending in Winnipeg. Josh Morrissey is moving into the wrong side of 30 as well. Like, you just won the President's Trophy, lost in 6 in the second round. This team's window is right now, and I don't see them moving off of any roster players, especially if Nikolai Ehlers walks in free agency, Remis. I can't see them then moving maybe another forward. I can see a defenseman, maybe one of the depth defensemen like Luke Shen, Colin Miller, maybe even Logan Stanley, because they do have, after they sign Dylan Sandberg, they'll have 8 defensemen under contract going into next season. So that is a full blue line, and that's without Hayden Fleury, who made it very well known that he wants to remain a Winnipeg Jet. That would make it 9. That's including Ville Heinola as well, who could be moved and is a roster player, played 18 games for the Jets last year. So I think it's more likely on the blue line that you see a roster player maybe traded or released. Up front, I can't see it, especially if Nikolai Ehlers walks. I think they'll be looking to add to that rather than subtract from it.
Yeah, I mentioned this yesterday. Iafallo, you just re-signed. Niederreiter, you just re-signed. Nemestikov, you just re-signed. Those guys, you're not going to just re-sign them to turn around and trade them right after. Kyle Connor, Mark Scheifele, not going anywhere. So who would really be the candidate? Adam Lowry, he's the captain. He's under contract, not going anywhere. So I agree with you on the forwards. Defense, I am curious if they go in to next season with this group. Pionk, Morrissey, DeMello, Shen, Miller, Stanley, Hainel, all under contract. Plus you have to sign Dylan Sandberg, like you mentioned, that's 8. Do they go in with all those guys, or is there some shuffling done as we head into the offseason and head into the regular season? And I should mention, shout out to Jay Miller in chat. He says, Connor's FA preview, that's free agency preview, is a must-watch. Check it out on our channel here. A solid 10 minutes, Connor, full of information, contract projections, questions for the comments, people answering those. Should they stay? Should they go? As people come out with their trade boards, free agent boards, contract projections, some interesting information here as we look at the Jets RFAs and the big ones, Velarde and Sandberg and UFA and Nikolai Ehlers. Not really any concerns here for RFAs, Velarde and Sandberg. As last year we had Perfetti. Negotiations go into training camp. He responded to a pretty big season and he big in the series versus St. Louis. But really no concerns here with Velarde and Sandberg. You'd like to see them lock up long term with those guys.
Yeah, so the UFA RFA preview, shout out Jay Miller for giving me the shout out. Really appreciate that. That was a fun video to put together. I used Evolving Hockey's contract projections for every single player and outlined, what their contract would be if they were to re-sign with the Winnipeg Jets, or at least what their projected contract is. And there were some big ticket. There was some sticker shock because we're heading into a new cap environment here in the NHL. And Nikolai Ehlers, for example, we'll throw it to the chat. People here with us live on YouTube. 8 years, $9.3 million per season was his projected contract from Evolving Hockey. And you might think there's no way Nikolai Ehlers is a $9.3 million player, but the cap is going up from 88 to 95.5 to 104 to 113 over these next 4 years. Like the contracts you're going to see are just going to be higher and higher every single year. And it's quite something. And the contract projections take that into account, of course. And it was really interesting moving into the cap environment that we are, going player by player and saying, okay, what is their projected contract? Would you bring this player back? And thank you to everyone who watched it, commented. And if you haven't watched it already, go check it out. It was fun to put together. Yeah,
awesome stuff there, Connor. I do have to give a shout out. I see Gregory in chat the day after his birthday. He's at the Valor FC match. 11,000 at Princess Auto Stadium for Valor taking on Vancouver FC. Right. Valor winning 3-1. So I think that would be their biggest win in Valor history. Pretty impressive stuff. An impressive afternoon here in Winnipeg. 11 a.m. You had the Gold Eyes at home and Valor at home as well, winning 3-1. So pretty. I have to check the Gold Eyes results. Been getting ready for this show, but pretty impressive there for Valor FC. Nice run here.
Yeah, that is pretty impressive. I saw that game was happening, and great for them to win that game. Definitely their biggest win, or at least I would say. The Gold Eyes, I saw they took a 1-0 lead. I don't know. I'll have to check what the score is, but they're doing their second school day game. I worked for the Gold Eyes last summer, and those school day games were always fun. Like the kids were just going absolutely nuts every time the Gold Eyes scored a run or whatever the case might be. So that was really cool to experience last year. Those school day games where the seats are just packed with kids on field trips, and I'm sure the Gold Eyes are going to try and reward them today with a big win, getting in the win column. I saw that they lost last night, so getting back in the win column for the Gold Eyes today, hopefully.
Very nice. And the other local team, the Bombers, they are practicing, had to move it inside today with the air quality concerns, but CFL kicking off tomorrow. I got to check the game again. Ottawa, Saskatchewan, in Saskatchewan. Yep. Are you a little less excited for week one with no Bombers, or are you going to be tuning in to Ottawa, Saskatchewan tomorrow?
I'm definitely still fired up for opening weekend. I think part of what takes away from my excitement, Remis, is not only were the Bombers, playing on opening weekend the past couple of years, but they were like the first game. Like the Bombers were at home on Thursday night, Princess Auto Stadium. It was against, Hamilton the 1 year, it was against Montreal the 1 year, where even though the Bombers got blown out, it's still great to open this season at Princess Auto Stadium. I'm definitely, the excitement's a little bit down. I'm going to be very excited to get back to, Princess Auto Stadium for Blue Bomber football next week against the BC Lions. Jeff Hamilton and Huss on CFL 110 mentioned how much parity there is around the CFL. And I think that's adding to my excitement just league wide for this season that we're heading into. Like I'm genuinely fascinated to see which teams emerge and which teams have maybe a down year. So this is going to be a fun CFL season. CFL 110 was great this past, or I guess that was only yesterday now. So go check that out if you haven't already. But I'm definitely still excited for CFL football, Remis, even without the Bombers. Where do you sit on that?
Yeah, for me, I agree with you. The last couple of years, it's been the Bombers up here, and then a gap, and then whoever else. Montreal's been in there, BC. I think Montreal closed it last year. Montreal, excellent in the regular season. They did lose to Toronto in the playoffs, and I'm just remembering now, Chad Kelly had that gruesome injury in that game, which led to Nick Arbuckle starting in the Grey Cup. Seemed to have blocked that from my memory, but that is what happened. I think the teams are a lot closer. Hamilton, Bo Levi Mitchell showed that he still got game. Last year they got Kenny Lawler. Montreal rolling with Davis Alexander, and I'm going to talk about him with Paul LaPolice. Saskatchewan, they had a really good first half. I don't know what happened in the second half. They got to figure out how to stop these second half slides. Talk about the Jets doing that the last couple of years. That's been Saskatchewan's MO. And Ottawa, Drew Brown with another year starting will be big for him, and getting some legitimate receiver talent. Pimpleton, big year coming for him. Geno Lewis has got a real quarterback on a real team. And BC, Nathan Rourke, full season for him. And Edmonton, Trey Ford finally starting. Calgary, their quarterback problem solved with Vernon Adams Jr. is on his way to an MOP season with BC. How is he going to do in Calgary? So a lot of intriguing questions about all the teams, especially the blue and gold. Connor, thanks for. Yeah, here you want to go on.
Well, I was just gonna say I'm very interested. Huss and Jeff Hamilton brought up yesterday that like the Edmonton Elks and Trey Ford, every time he comes in, it's like halfway through the season, the Elks are like done. Like they've lost a million games. They come in. This is the first time that Trey Ford's going to be playing like meaningful games right out of the start of the season with some pressure on him. So the last game of the week this week, Edmonton at BC. I'm very, very fascinated to see how Nathan Rourke looks, because he came in last year and didn't look like his usual self from previous seasons, and Trey Ford playing, some high pressure football, not meaningless football with the Elks out of it. So excited for CFL week 1, Stanley Cup Finals tonight. Valor, Gold Eyes, Blue Bombers next week. Things are picking up here for the summer sports, Remis.
Yeah, and I got to clarify, I got mixed up. This is why I don't do breaking news on the show. One bird notes was Valor had a regular league win versus Vancouver FC, not the Vancouver Whitecaps, who will be playing later in Vancouver in the Canadian Championship. So I mixed up there. Going to edit that part out. Big win. Edit the part. Any win for Valor, a big win, as they haven't had many of them since coming into the CPL. All right, Connor, it was great talking with you. We're going to go to Hustler, and then I will be bringing in CFL on TSN analyst Paul LaPolice.
Do got to shout out Rolly's transfer. Folks, if you got a move coming up this year, holler at our friends at Rolly's, family owned and operated for over 60 years in Winnipeg, and the most trusted name in moving in Manitoba. And you might just be lucky enough to get your stuff moved in the Winnipeg Sports Talk truck, which you can see running all over the streets of Winnipeg. If you do have a move, head on over to their website at rollies.com. Click on Request an Estimate. Put in the promo code WST for a special discount on moving services and moving supplies. And then let them know when and where you're planning on moving and what needs to go. And our friends at Rollies will turn it around quickly with a great quote and get you locked in for the white glove service that they are famous for. For your next move, make it Rollies, the most trusted name in Manitoba in moving. Find out more, request an estimate today over at rollies.com. Great seeing Dr. Terry on the weekend out at the soccer game and the Match Play Championship. Of course, St. Patel Dental Center, proud sponsor of Winnipeg Sports Talk, serving generations of Winnipeggers in Manitoba. out in the old St. Vital area, but it's worth the drive wherever you are in the city because they've got a beautiful new facility, state-of-the-art equipment with free parking right behind the building. It couldn't be any more convenient, and a full array of dental services for patients from 6 months to 99 plus, everything from checkups and cleanings all the way to things like dental implants. For more information on all of their services and to make an appointment, hit them up online at stvitaldental.ca. We got a nice weekend, a nice few days coming up. We're going to talk to Andrew Collier later on about the upcoming Gold Eyes homestand. Also a great time to maybe try a couple great new summer drinks, including the Canadian Club Pack, which is not just the famous Canadian Club and ginger ale. They've also added a citrus smash, which is amazing, and the half and half, which I think is going to be our go-to on the golf course this year. Arnold Palmer, half iced tea, lemonade, with the great taste of Canada's iconic Canadian whiskey. Canadian Club, pick it up today at your local Manitoba liquor marts when you pop by. Just before we bring in Dave, big weekends coming up. Boating, camping, jet skis. Got to make sure you got batteries for all these things, folks. And this is an important time to remind you all that you can shop local and save a lot of money by driving past the big box stores over to Manitoba Battery. 2 locations in Winnipeg to serve you, Logan Avenue and Dovercourt Drive in the south end of the city. And there you'll find the biggest and best selection of batteries for literally everything at the best prices in town. You'll save up to $50 a battery for your campers and boats by dealing with Manitoba Battery. And hey, if you're busy and you can't make it down, no sweat. Go online to manitobabattery.com or give them a call. They'll deliver you your batteries for free anywhere in the city with any purchase over $60. It is just that easy. For all your battery needs, keep it local, get the best price in town with Manitoba Battery, 2 locations, and manitobabattery.com.
There's a season Toronto at the RBC Canadian Open, taking in some Blue Jays this afternoon. He'll be back next week, and so pumped to be joined by CFL and TSN analyst Paul LaPolice. Check out his YouTube channel, Coach Lapo on YouTube. Just search for Paul LaPolice. Done some great previews leading up to the season. If you need some more content, he'll be covering week 1 this weekend. But first, this segment brought to you by Ben Moss. Ben Moss is proudly Canadian-owned and operated with history dating back more than 100 years. 3 locations in Winnipeg: Polo Park Shopping Center, St. Vital Center, and Kildonan Place, committed to customer satisfaction. Check out a large selection of Canadian mined diamonds, lab-grown diamonds, and mine diamonds available with payment plans to suit your need. For more information, check out benmoss.com. Ben Moss, because love is timeless. And let's bring him in. Head coach, Paul LaPolice, CFL and TSN analyst, Paul LaPolice. Lapo, thanks so much for taking the time to hop on. You feeling good heading into the start of the season this weekend? Does it bring back a good feeling here as we approach kickoff?
It's exciting to get done with preseason games and go to regular season games. There's a lot of cool stories, I think, this season.
Yeah, and we do have the TSN Top 50 list. Brady Oliveira ranked number 1. Any surprise there for you? And where did he rank on your list?
So I didn't have him. I had him in the top 10, but I didn't have him that high. I had a couple other guys higher than him. I had Bo Levi Mitchell as my number 1 top player for what he did last year. I had Kenny Lawler number 2 and Tyrese Beverett number 3 and Roland Milligan number 4. Those were my, and Fuller and Remilado was my 5th. That was my top 5.
Yeah, the Bombers have 5 players: Caleros 10, Jefferson 12, Bryant 28, and Schoen 29 for the Bombers, looking to get back to their 6th straight Grey Cup appearance. What's different about the Bombers team this year compared to last year, and can they get back there at the championship game in Winnipeg?
Yeah, I think when everybody starts talking about who's going to be great and who can be in the Grey Cup and everything, the first thing I kind of look to is defense, if you know what I mean, Mike. Like, All right, let's start with the Bombers. Bombers number 1 defense in the league in preventing people from scoring. Opponent offensive points, first in the CFL. Net offense, first in the CFL. Opponent first downs, first. Passing yards, first. Completion percentage, first defensively. So, like, this team does what you want defensively. So they've got to be in the conversation. Another team that will be in the conversation is Montreal. Why? They've got a really good defense. Now they got a young quarterback. So we got to see what will happen there. And Saskatchewan had a good defense. So I start with defense. The teams that had the best defense should have a chance to continue on. I thought Jordan Younger did a good job last year in Winnipeg. I thought Vaughters coming in from Calgary gives a little bit more veteran presence next to Willie Jefferson. So I think Winnipeg is going to be in the conversation. They've got some changes on offense. They have to figure that out, but they do get Dalton Schoen back, new offensive coordinator. So it'll be interesting to see. But I like Winnipeg. Again, anytime you're really good defensively, that gives you a chance to win every week.
Yeah, the Bombers taking the West last year. Is Saskatchewan still number 2 there, or is that gap closing? BC in the mix as well with Nathan Rourke coming
I think
back.
there's just a lot of change. Calgary's got a lot of change. BC's got some change themselves. And obviously Edmonton has a lot of change. So Saskatchewan's got consistency in the coaching staff and their players. Trevor Harris healthy should help them. So that's, I think, a good opportunity for Saskatchewan to kind of leapfrog people, especially during the season, know what they're doing, and get where they need to be, where some of the other teams trying to find themselves early on. But I'm not going to discount, every team in the West has got some quarterback play. So Vernon Adams going to Calgary is going to help that team dramatically and help them, put more points on the board. So Nathan Rourke, it'll be interesting to see how they settle in. And obviously Edmonton signed a lot of high-priced guys. So it'll be interesting. Trey Ford as the starter all season.
Yeah, quarterback play across the league, not a lot of question marks for a lot of teams. Seems interesting. There's one team that has a bit of a question mark, Chad Kelly and Toronto coming off injury. Seems like they've had a lot of changes there for Toronto, the defense, a couple players moving on. Can Toronto return to the level that they've been at with all these changes going on the roster?
Yeah, I mean, I think the interesting thing for Toronto is they did 2 years ago, the same thing happened. They lost a lot of free agents, and they were able to overcome that and at least get themselves back to the Grey Cup. So change happens again. They've lost a ton of talent on the defensive side of the football. If Chad Kelly can come back, this is a team that, with multiple quarterbacks playing last year, still led the CFL in points scored. So I think offensively, especially with Chad Kelly, when he gets healthy, they're going to be able to put points on the board, but are they going to be able to stop people? But they have Wynton McManus, but they're going to be very young up front, or on the defensive line is going to be a different crew than what they had the last couple of years. So looking forward to seeing them. They should be good with they're going to put points on the board.
Yeah, Toronto losing 5 players on the D-line and 2 DBs. The other team in the East, Montreal, how tough a call was it for them to stick with Davis Alexander after what he did in a short time frame last year and move on from Cody Fajardo? And did they make the right choice?
Well, I mean, time will tell, but I would say this. You don't often have a lot of opportunities. There's a couple of things in their favor with Davis. Is one, he'd been in the building for 2 years. Some organizations, because of injuries or something happens, and it happened to me in Ottawa, that you're playing a guy who really hasn't even been in the building long. Like Caleb Evans, for me, started, and he'd never even played in a preseason game. And that's a hard thing to do, where some of the guys get brought along that sit on the bench for a year or two. That prepares them a little bit. They're in all the meetings and everything. That's the first thing with Davis Alexander. So they knew his work study, his character, how he prepared. And then you had an opportunity with a guy who had 4 starts because of injuries, and he actually had 4 starts and finished half of a game, and he went 5-0 in those games. So in those football games, he threw touchdowns, not interceptions. He used his legs. He did all the things that a team goes, oh, right, this guy could show up and take over and be a younger, more affordable quarterback for us at that point. And I think that's what the decision's made. The other thing that makes that decision a little bit easier is they are so good on defense. that Davis doesn't have to do it all himself. They know they're going to keep people. They're second best in the CFL in keeping points off the board defensively. So Davis doesn't have to do it all by himself. So time will tell, but they've got a lot of data points on the guy, and that allowed that decision to be easier.
Yeah, sticking in the East, two teams that seem to be on the rise, Hamilton and Ottawa. Hamilton getting Kenny Lawler. Ottawa, Drew Brown another year as starter. Geno Lewis there might actually get some passes thrown to him. What do you see from these two teams, and can they take a step forward in the East?
I think for Ottawa, I expect them to be better offensively. William Stanback, Geno Lewis. Can they run the ball a little bit more? Can they help Drew Brown by establishing the run game? Is something I'm going to be looking for this season. But, really for Ottawa to get better, there's two areas. Ottawa's got to take the football away more on defense. They gave up way too many explosives last year, and you saw the change at defense coordinator Willie Fields comes in. So can they establish the back end and the secondary? Can they perform at a level to get more takeaways, but also not give up explosive plays? And then offensively, I think they're going to be better. I think they've gotten better pieces around Drew Brown. They just have to clean up the two areas offensively as they turn the ball over too much. And that's why, they're one of the worst turnover margin teams in the CFL. And it's hard to win that way. And, they got to make sure they continue to put points on the board. They sometimes struggled in the red zone. So if they can get that cleaned up, I expect good things from Ottawa this year. I expect them, to be able to contend as long as Drew Brown stays healthy.
And Hamilton, Bo Levi, you had him as your number one player. I thought, he's taken on the downswing of his career, but he really showed up, and you have to think Kenny Lawler going to be a huge boost there.
Well, one of the reasons I know general manager Ted Gavaya, formerly from Winnipeg, went out and got Kenny Lawler, and Kenny Lawler was not cheap. He was a high-priced veteran free agent, but I think he suits what Bo Levi Mitchell does well. He likes to see one-on-one matchups downfield, and he likes to throw it up to his big targets. And there's no better player to do that. I think Kenny Lawler out-jumps people and can catch the ball at all different areas around his body as good as anybody I've ever coached. So that's a great piece for them. They've got to get better defensively. So there's a change of defensive coordinator. Hopefully they end up, continuing to grow defensively to help that offense. Because later in the year, they lost a lot of games, but I thought it was more what they were doing defensively than what Scott was putting forth with Bo. And for Bo, I think Bo learned some lessons with Scott about, protecting the football, making great decisions with the football and protecting it. But they have a very good recipe to push the ball downfield.
Yeah, Paul, as we head into week one and the season, is there a storyline that you're excited to follow? What's standing out to you in Coach Lapo's playbook?
Two things. I'm looking forward to watching Davis Alexander versus Toronto, and I'll be calling that game in the booth. So I'm excited that one. And I think the other one is you got Trey Ford going to Trey Ford playing Nathan Rourke. We have the two Canadians playing, right? BC playing Edmonton on Saturday night. What's kind of neat about that is Nathan Rourke's in a new system, with Buck Pierce, and Trey Ford's in a new system with Jordan McSimic, which was Nathan's coordinator. So interesting to see how both those guys perform in new systems. So I think those are the two. The Canadian quarterbacks getting the start, and then the young Davis Alexander in the East.
Yeah, Nathan Rourke, him and Austin Mack, two guys who spent time in NFL last year, came back to the CFL and really, were not at the form that they were previously. I'm curious to see if a full season, training camp, they're able to return to that level. Paul, as we wrap up the CFL conversation, I think congratulations are in order. You were named head coach of Canada flag football at the LA 2028 Olympics. How did this come about? And what have you learned about flag football? This is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Before we went on this call, I was just kind of working on some flag football stuff. So Kevin McDonald used to work for the league offices in charge of Football Canada. They are expanding. Obviously, they want to have a Obviously a men's and women's somewhat full-time job at the area of flag football, because it's an Olympic sport in 2028, as you said. So he asked me, would I help on the interview process? So I said, sure. Yeah, no problem. And then a couple of days later, I called him. I was like, I'm coaching my son's flag. So how do I, be part of the staff? And he's like, well, you got to apply. And I said, all right. So I stepped off the committee and I applied. And then, I started to take it real seriously when I had some talks with people in Saskatchewan. And they said, you're perfect for the job because eventually it will be populated with, professional football players, and you've got experience coaching them. And I think they're going to appreciate somebody with professional coaching background. So I talked to TSN. They said they would be okay with it. And then, so I went through. On my interview was, it was a good crew, and I got the job. And so we've got now 12 guys. We're taking to LA in 3 weeks for a tournament. And then we go to Panama City, Panama in the end of September, or the middle of September, for a tournament again. And that tournament, I think we got to finish 5th out of 17, top 5 out of 17. So it's exciting. I'm learning about the game. It's a lot of stuff to learn, but we're trying to grow and learn the business.
Now, looking ahead to 2028, there could be some NFL players on USA. Are they just going to roll over everyone, or is this more competitive than we realize among all the countries?
Well, I mean, we don't know all the logistics of the NFL. Like, we do know the NFL has allowed their players in, one per team, as well as an international player. And what that means is if there's somebody from Canada and there's somebody from the U.S., 2 players can go, but there's only 1 per country, per team. So I do understand where people will say, like, well, the U.S. will have all these guys. Well, Canada has multiple NFL players too. So like we'll have a very good roster. I don't know. That's so far away. We're not too concerned about it. Right now, we're concerned about winning this season, and we'll figure out all that stuff down the road.
Very cool. I'm excited to see you with a headset for flag football.
No headsets.
with the clipboard on the sidelines. So we will be watching you, Paul. Excited to see you represent Canada, and excited to see you on TSN this weekend for week 1. No Bombers, but full slate of games. Thanks so much for taking the time to join me here today on Winnipeg Sports Talk.
Thanks, Michael.
There he is, Paul LaPolice. Check him out on YouTube. Link in the description of this video. Coach Lapo. Just search for Paul LaPolice. Previews on every team. I did call him coach and corrected myself coming in, but he is, in fact, head coach of Team Canada for the flag football in 2028 in LA Olympics. Very cool. Curious to see how that turns out. As you mentioned, they're not focused on the Olympics quite yet. They have some other tournaments ahead. Got to name the team, find the players. Very cool. Flag football, up and coming sport there. But CFL starts tomorrow. Ottawa in Saskatchewan. We're going to get back to some hockey talk, some Jets talk. Murat of The Athletic will join me shortly. But first, here's Huss.
Princess Auto, proud sponsors of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, Winnipeg Sports Talk, and so much else in our sporting community and city. Of course, Princess Auto has 3 locations in Winnipeg and Manitoba, Panet Road, Portage Avenue West, and Brandon, where you'll find the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new is at Princess Auto. You can always find out more online and shop 24/7, 365 at princessauto.com as well. Now, I'm getting ready to get out to Aikens in a month or so. And listen, I've already seen people out on the river fishing this year. Fishing season is finally here. We got some gorgeous weather. But if you're thinking about maybe taking that fishing experience to the next level, get over to aikenslake.com and find out more about availability and options for the 2025 fishing season at Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge. World-class fishing and even more world-class hospitality from the Aikens team and the Turan family. And you can be on the water in less than 2 hours from the city of Winnipeg. including a short flight. Again, aikenslake.com for more information on the 2025 season, and I encourage you to check out all their social media feeds at Aikens Lake for more on what the Aikens experience is all about. Of course, we are getting into that time, folks, where it's wedding season, a lot of busy weekends coming up for many of you. If this coincides with you needing to up your menswear game, head on over to our friends at F Apparel at 190 Smith Street. Just celebrated 15 years in business here in the Peg, featuring the best in men's clothing with custom suits starting at just over $400. Chinos, golf pants, custom shirts, both tucked and untucked styles, and an incredible selection of menswear accessories. And of course, speaking of weddings, if you are just getting engaged or planning a wedding, make sure to talk to the guys at F about a special discount for the wedding party when the guys get their suits for the big day over at F Apparel, 190 Smith Street downtown. Find out more or make an appointment to come in for a fitting online at F. That's EPHapparel.com.
There's us. And before we get to Murat Atesh shortly, let's get to some fan feedback brought to you by Fans First. Your best option for buying and selling tickets in Winnipeg with no fees. What you see is what you pay. Certainly the best place if you have a pair of seats to sell them or you're looking to buy a pair of seats as well. Utilizing Fans First, so user-friendly, customer service great, and you're getting paid the next day after the game. Fans First, we've been talking about them all year for Jets season, but Bombers on there as well. And I asked the chat, who do you want to win the Stanley Cup? Can you cheer for the Oilers? Go Blue says, I honestly could not stomach a year of spoiler fans reminding the entire world that they won a Stanley Cup. Darth Skater, I'm old enough to remember Jets 1.0, but I don't care about that. It's a million years ago. McDavid should get a cup. Krugs says Oilers winning makes me sick to think of. Jim Ritchie, hate the Oilers and the Eskimos with a passion. 5 Grey Cups and 4 Stanley in the 80s. And last one from Comet, Oinkers can't win the cup. Bettman will never allow it. LOL. That one's for the conspiracy theorists, and fan feedback brought to you by Fans First, your number one spot for buying and selling tickets by fans, for fans, with no fees. Connor, has your opinion? You and I talked about how we didn't care about that. We wanted to see the Oilers win. Has your opinion changed after seeing many users in our chat, many chatters? Makes me sick, says, I don't want Krugs to get sick. Do you? If they won?
No, I don't. I don't want that to happen. I don't know. My opinion hasn't really changed, Remo. I gotta say, I'm still not like actively rooting for the Oilers. I think I'm okay if the Panthers win. I mean, you get to see Paul Maurice win a Stanley Cup, but I'm on the Oilers. I like that story. Bring the cup back to Canada. I'm not just cheering for them because they're a Canadian team. I want to see Connor McDavid win a cup. So that the chat tried their best, but they haven't changed my mind going into the finals.
Man, Paul Maurice, 2-time Stanley Cup champion. Feels good to say. I was ready for the first one with pictures and GIFs and videos on our social media of him. Took us to new heights in terms of the video of him saying he wanted Winnipeg to win. Will we get another moment like that? One interesting thing Hustler pointed out to me, actually, we're going to look at the betting lines after, but you can bet on who the first person they're going to hand the cup off to. So Barkov with Florida, Edmonton, McDavid, who they're going to hand it off to. You know who the favorite is on each of them? This is one of the funnier props that you could have. Hold on, I gotta find this prop, but I think Nuge the favorite for Edmonton, and I think Nate Schmidt was for Florida.
Really?
I guess because he was one of the few guys who wasn't on Florida last year, so he hasn't won a cup. So he hasn't won a cup and is a veteran player. So I guess that's why Nate Schmidt, he's not playing a huge role. Remember, he was on the Jets last year. I had to remind Hustler that because it seems like a long time ago, but that was last year.
That's shocking to me that he's the favorite to get the cup. I mean, like, again, it's all relative. Like favorite, like they could literally hand it to anyone. But yeah, that's interesting to me. And for the Oilers, Nugent Hopkins makes sense. He's been there so long, so I totally get that.
Ryan Nugent Hopkins plus 200, Draisaitl plus 300, Nate Schmidt plus 400, and Seth Jones 7, Marchand plus 1,200, Ekblad 13, Bobrovsky, Corey Perry, Zach Hyman was plus 6,000 to be the first cup handoff. So it's kind of a funny wager. I didn't even know that you could do that.
Yeah, neither did I. That's something we'll have to dive into in the Coolbet Lines.
Yeah, we'll dive into that later. There were odds. I saw they did have odds on Jonathan Taves, which team he's going to sign that. I'm sure we'll have some Taves discussion, some 2C discussion as I bring in Murat Atesh of The Athletic in just a second. Before we do that, before we bring in Murat, got to give a shout out to Prairie Toyota Dealers. Where is it? I got to bring up my page here. And here it is. Prairie Toyota Dealers sponsor this segment. They want to remind you to get in and go with the Toyota Tundra. The Toyota Tundra quality, that means it has the strength to take on any challenge, off-road or hauling a heavy load, backed by the peace of mind, knowing it's a Toyota. Take the road less traveled in comfort, room for teammates, friends, and gear. Leads from $154 weekly for 60 months at 5.39 APR with $71.99 down. Hybrid options available. Visit shoptoyota.ca. We're into the NHL offseason, and it's time to bring up Murat Atesh of The Athletic. We're talking Jets, Cup Final. I know Murat is busy with a number of pieces. That's what you call them, right, Murat? Pieces? That's the fancy word at The Athletic. Murat, how's it going? Oh, wait. I got to bring you in. One second here. I'm doing it all by myself. I got to hit one more button, and you will be in. Murat, what's going on?
All pilot, no co-pilot, eh, bud?
I'm doing everything myself. I'm pumped to be here. How are you feeling?
I'm doing well. I also appreciate the discussion of piece versus story versus article versus what have you, and I have used all those words.
One time, and they got mad at me because I didn't call it a column. It was very embarrassing. So I never know what to call it these days. Murat, what do you refer to your work at The Athletic as?
Other than must subscribe Jets entertainment for all of your listeners. It depends on what it is, but you would never hurt me by calling it an article or a story or a column or an anything. There are some definitions, like if it's pure opinion piece, that's a column, sure. If it's like, a story about somebody's life, that'd be more of a feature. But literally anything you could call an article or piece or a story. And I'd just be happy you were talking about it.
Maybe we're getting a little too inside baseball here, Murat, with all this conversation, but I'm here for it. Let's get to the Jets offseason conversation. We did have some Jets news yesterday. Rasmus Kupari signing in Switzerland, 2 years with HC Lugano. What impact will this have on the Jets roster?
It's an interesting one because I think they were pretty excited with the progress that he had made. And especially in the first half of the season, it looked like maybe the amount of wheels that he had been joined by his read of the game. Like he scored a beautiful goal. I believe it was preseason. He contributed to offense early. There was a sense that maybe the hockey IQ and that just the speed that he processed the game was catching up to his foot speed, and that was a wonderful push. So that is, if he takes a step forward next year, playing in Switzerland, the Jets may feel like they've missed out on that contribution in their lineup. I expect they'll qualify him and retain his rights should he ever make an NHL return. But I think when you're talking about an edge of the roster player, he won the fourth line center job. It's not really an emergency unless he goes supernova, and I'm not expecting that. Mostly I'm expecting, maybe that's David Gustafson's job. Maybe that's Morgan Barron's job now. And I think the Jets are well covered off in that particular position, as you saw in the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Yes, certainly. And the center position, something we'll be talking about, and especially as the season starts with Adam Lowry missing the first couple months of the season. But I'm looking at what you're writing at The Athletic. Murat, we're on Ehlers' watch. This is, what are we in, week 3, week 4? And what's your sense? I got to ask if he's staying or going. I did notice that you and Shanna Goldman wrote an article about where the best fit is for Ehlers if he does not sign in Winnipeg. How are you feeling as we enter, you're less than a month away to July 1 right now?
Yeah, the closer we get to July 1st, the more that I believe Ehlers will explore what's out there. It seems to me that the most likely situation is that another team steps up on July 1 and makes him an offer that includes cash, playing time, all of those types of things, maybe even a preferred location fit, though I know that he loves Winnipeg as a community, and that he's probably not going to be returning to Winnipeg. At the same time, to their advantage, the Ehlers camp has said nothing publicly. I've been in touch with them, but only to the point of, hey, we're not going to say anything publicly. And the Jets have kept things quiet as well, other than to say they've made him a Jet for life type offer. And I think that that's true. I think that there would be a sizable term offer Ehlers' way. But if you go through that piece, there are teams that should be able to offer Ehlers more than Winnipeg can, and probably push well above the Scheifele and Hellebuck ceiling of 8.5, push into the 9s perhaps even as well. There are teams with cap space and obvious opportunity available. So for me, now we're talking on June 4th. If there were a Jets extension to be made after the so-called Jet for Life offer, and who knows how lucrative it actually was or wasn't, I think that we would have heard that by now. And the closer we get to July 1, it's like, if I were him, why wouldn't I at least see what the league was willing to pay, what the league was willing to offer, and what that opportunity could look like? Even if in the back of my mind there was some, I do love Winnipeg. If nobody's blowing my socks off here, why don't I pivot back? And my sense probably is that, some of those Eastern Conference teams, whether it's a Carolina, whether it's a New Jersey, et cetera, there's some spots where there could be a really good fit for him for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, I was planning on taking July 1 off as we have, it's Canada Day, but, if there is an Ehlers signing or he goes, what would be the most painful place on your list for Jets fans that he could possibly sign? What if he signed in Vegas? They seem to be in on every free agent. Would that be at the top of your power rankings of painful places where Ehlers would be next season?
I like it. Power rankings of pain.
That's what I'm here for. Sports and pain. Love it.
Sports is what? It's signing up to have your heart broken every year and then sign up for the belief in the dream all over again the next year. It's a romantic pursuit to love sports. And there's so much pain. I think Vegas is a great one because it always seems as though they take things that Winnipeg wants, or, I still think that Winnipeg would have been better off if it had somehow been able to acquire Mark Stone, let's say, as an example. But Vegas is always in the mix for those sorts of things. They're not in the greatest cap situation, so they would have to, move some pieces around, but we've seen them just get ruthless in that sort of way before. So perhaps. And then for me, what comes next? Winnipeg doesn't play Toronto a lot, so let's say Marner signs elsewhere, they have a pile of money and they sort of backfill with a guy like Nikolai Ehlers. I'm not thinking that's necessarily a landing spot, but would that burn Jets fans, or is he far enough away? Like, would Minnesota be a much more painful type of, oh God, we see this guy all the time now? Or if the Stars trade Robertson, which sounds insane to me, would they be in on a guy like Nikolai Ehlers? And could that be, a playoff matchup that the Jets have to see a couple of times? That's who's jumping out at me. Who am I missing, though?
Well, I'm just looking at your list, and there's no one here there's no other Central Division rivals. You mentioned Dallas if they do something crazy like trade Robertson, but the only other Central team you and Shayna mentioned were Chicago, who seems to be looking to spend money, but I mean, they're not going to be great for the foreseeable future. I do wonder if some player out there takes their money. They did sign veterans to big contracts the last couple of years. Corey Perry and Nick Foligno come to mind. Pat Maroon finished his career there. I feel like Ehlers wants the chance to win and be a contributor. So would it be Toronto? You'd have to watch him on Hockey Night in Canada. LA, they're looking to spend big. Are they in on Mitch Marner? I think it would be Vegas. I don't think anyone else is that close. I know Ehlers does have a lot of fans here. People want to cheer for him at his next destination. Might be tough if it was in Vegas.
If Remo? What if it's Washington? Like, what if he does so on PLD's wing? Would that hurt enough?
They're in the East. I think it does. When the Jets looking for that second line center that you thought Pierre-Luc Dubois, or they thought it was going to be when they traded for him, it would be strange to see that combination work on the number one team in the East from the regular season this year in Washington.
Yeah, Dubois still got booed this year, right? When you were in the stands and Washington was playing, and there's the big President's Trophy matchup. I think Dubois still gets booed in Winnipeg.
He got booed. Yes.
So, the thing about Ehlers is, to his credit, he's always been just like so engaging, I think, with fans. And there's so many stories of like, oh, my kid met Ehlers and it was the greatest day. And I think I've heard anyways, secondhand, a bunch of those stories. And it seems like there was also the Jake Evans thing where he like protects Evans from the swarm of fighting bodies. Like, most of Ehlers' public moments have just been so ingratiating that even if he takes 8.5 or 9 and runs and burns the Jets, I don't think he's a player that ever gets booed in this market.
No, I don't think he would get. I'm not saying he would get booed. I just think seeing him in a jersey that's not a Jets jersey is going to be painful to some. But would it be more painful if he did it in a Vegas jersey as opposed to another team? I think
probably Vegas is number one. But my gasp just now is like, I don't think Montreal is it. We included it. I really think Montreal wants a different type of veteran, bigger forward to supplement its skill. I don't think that's front burner. But what if he did it with Laine? Would Jets fans go like, what could have been? Would there be a little bit of nostalgia in that?
It's going to be interesting. I got to start, I don't think I was mentally prepared to see him in another jersey. But as you mentioned, as we get closer to July 1, I think you're at a point, and that's what happened with Jake Gensel, where he's like, well, I'm this close as it is. This was last year. I'm be crazy not to listen to the offers out there. Actually, one player who didn't do that was Brock Nelson, just signed a nice deal with Colorado. Mentioned that. So we'll see what happens. But we're at the Cup Finals tonight, and the NHL, a bit of a copycat league. One team does something, the other teams follow suit. What do you think the Jets can take away from the two finalists this year? What can they learn from them?
Yeah, I appreciate that question because, I wrote about that at The Athletic, and it sort of grinds my gears when people assume there's only one reason that other teams are good. And so, there's an assumption that, hey, it's only because Edmonton drafted Connor McDavid because they were so bad for so long that they're any good now. Well, if that were the case, they'd have made Cup Finals years before last year. I think what the Oilers have done particularly well is throwing a lot of darts. And by that, I mean, like, if you go through their history, they made some mistakes after they drafted McDavid. They brought in a lot of veterans. They paid them a lot of money. They had to buy out multiple players. You go to, like, Mikko Koskinen, Jack Campbell, Milan Lucic, like a lot of dead money on their cap at various times. So it's taken them a long time to build anything resembling a supporting cast. If you look at just how well they do with McDavid and Draisaitl on the ice, and then how well they do when they're on the bench, they used to be one of the worst teams in the entire NHL with their best two players off of the ice, and that's not acceptable. So to the Oilers' credit, in the last couple of years, they've taken some swings, and not all of them work out, whether it's and certainly it's cost them in the form of offer sheets to Holloway and Broberg. But, they took a swing at Arvidsson. They took a swing at Trent Frederick. They took a swing at John Klingberg. These aren't all difference makers, but Zach Hyman was a difference maker for a while. Evander Kane was a difference maker and still is for them, and still healthy and all that sort of stuff. They were willing to throw darts and take shots. And then if guys didn't work out, they had no problem burying them down the lineup or letting them move on. And I think that was necessary. The more desperate Edmonton got and has been as McDavid and Draisaitl age, and they still haven't won a Stanley Cup, the more intelligent I think that their swings and their bets at these depth players have been. And you also look at the creativity on the Oilers' part. They've made 3 team trades in back-to-back trade deadlines just to make sure that they can fit cap hits for players. And there's a level of creativity and desperation to that that I think that Winnipeg could stand to learn from. Obviously, the key, draft McDavid and Draisaitl, you're doing all right, but that's not everything, and the Oilers have gotten better at building around them. Florida, everybody just talks about taxes, and that's fine, but look at the number of players they've traded for. Matthew Tkachuk wasn't a Florida draft pick. Sam Bennett, Sam Reinhart, Seth Jones, and what happens all of the time in those cases is that they step up and they pay premium assets, and those assets are almost always Florida Panthers homegrown draft picks. Spencer Knight, Devin Levi sent to Buffalo, and they've drafted well, retained, and then they've been willing to move on from players early because they've drafted so well. They always step up and then seem to find a way to land the big fish. That's not everything, but I do think that Winnipeg's taxes, Winnipeg's in Canada. There's nothing that they could possibly learn from a team like Florida that everything gets handed to. And you actually go through the moves like I did in that piece to some extent. And they're taking a lot of big swings, and there's a lot of things that they do well as well.
It's kind of funny. And I think you heard that about Vegas too, saying, were gifted a team from the expansion draft. Well, so many other teams made mistakes in trading with them, and you mentioned they took big swings as well in trading for Jack Eichel. But Florida, some of the key moves for them, picking up Gustav Forsling off waivers. He's a top pair. He's a top pair D. Sam Reinhart, he was falling out of favor in Buffalo, picked him up for a first-round pick. Not exactly a huge price to pay. You mentioned the Seth Jones trade. Nico Mikla, he's on the second pair. I mean, he was a cast-off from St. Louis and turned him into a pretty good defenseman this year. So I think there is some...
Verhaeghe picked up off of Tampa Bay for dirt cheap when Tampa Bay didn't qualify him.
I agree. I think it's easy to say, the taxes, these teams have such an advantage. And I think there is an element to that at parts, but I do think it does discredit a lot of the moves that they made on players that anyone could have grabbed. Like a Gustav Forsling, and you mentioned Verhaeghe, who Kevin writes in chat as well. You just said so. Credit to their management for identifying players who were undervalued and turning them into top line players for them. Talking about making trades. You mentioned in the Athletic. What can the Jets do this offseason to get them past the second round? What's number one on Cheveldayoff's to-do list here?
I mean, for me, it's that second line center hole would be the big one, and we've talked about on this show, right? The Jets have traded first round picks away so many times at the trade deadline, and then the guy signs somewhere else, and they would have done that for Brock Nelson again, who Colorado was his number one spot to play. So look, okay, he's re-signed there, great. If they can come up with a long-term solution, that would be a huge thing. And I talked about Edmonton's desperation a second ago. Well, Mark Scheifele's in his early 30s now. How long is he going to be at this incredible level he played at this season? Josh Morrissey's turned 30. Connor Hellebuck's on the wrong side of 30. this isn't like the young, up-and-coming, upstart Winnipeg Jets at this stage. This is a veteran team that needs its next wave. And so for me, there's got to be a little bit of urgency for second-line center. That doesn't mean Sam Bennett is going to sign in Winnipeg. That's absolutely not going to happen. It doesn't mean shoehorning Jonathan Toews into the second-line center spot if the 37-year-old is more of a third or perhaps even a fourth-line guy at this time. But, he would certainly help the center depth. It might mean looking outside of the obvious UFAs as well. And it might mean backfilling for Ehlers and wings that sort of help do things that other Jets players don't do. I've been talking a little bit about Andrew Mangiapane, who would be a great buy low option on the free agent market. 29 years old, 40 to 50 points in a standard year. The Capitals played him on the third line this year, so his point totals look bad, but his price would be amenable, and he still drives play. His fantasy stats are great. He's one of the best puck retrievers in terms of recovering a forecheck on the Capitals roster. There's so many things to like about a player like that. Will Cully, pardon me, out of New York, has been talked about a bit as an offer sheet candidate, given some of the Rangers' tumult and turnover. He's a player who drags people into the fight as well. I think that if the Jets can get their 2C sorted, they're golden. If they can't, then they got to do more of what they've already had success with. Cheveldayoff crushed it with the Niederreiter edition, with the Nemesnikov edition. If they can get that player but an upgraded version, and that's what I see Mangiapane to be, that type of player to just make him a bit tougher to play against while also being capable of finishing those plays. Those are the directions that I sort of would hope that they go in.
Yeah, insiders mentioning some names on the trade block. We're hearing Marco Rossi in Minnesota, Elias Paterson, not on their promotional graphic for season tickets in Vancouver, causing a big stir. Is there? I guess you mentioned a few names, but any of those guys ring a bell? Would the Jets be interested in players like that?
Well, it's a good philosophical question, the Rossi thing. Like I've contributed. I don't think the piece is up yet, but to
I read it already. Yeah.
It's up? Okay, so it's live. It lives. It's out in the world.
Yeah. So Michael Russo wrote at The Athletic about Rossi and potential destinations, and you did contribute your thoughts to that.
You know what you were doing was you were setting me up to talk about it, and it was so subtle and genius, and now I'm drawing attention inside baseball to look at how prepared Remo is, guys. Like everybody, this was a subtle, okay. And Rossi is a great thought for me because he's like a 60-point caliber player already. He's from the Perfetti draft year. He's of an age window you would love the Jets to acquire. He's of a talent level that you would love the Jets to acquire. Projectable second-line center. And he's undersized. And I think if you talk to Jets fans right now, and probably even Jets management, they're not really that keen on a player so far below 6 feet and relatively undersized being one of their solutions going forward. Already playing maybe a softer game in terms of the Kyle Connors and a Cole Perfetti and these aren't soft players necessarily, but they're not having big physical angst to play against types of impacts. Mark Scheifele is more cerebral than he is brute force as well. Like you go up and down the lineup, Ehlers especially was that as well. So I don't know that like stylistically Rossi is the answer in Winnipeg, but that exact age and production level of a player, if you believe in him at all to get it done in the playoffs, that is somebody who you should be thinking of. And then there's no way in a million years, but I did have somebody very, very smart put it to me recently. You know what the Jets should do, he said? If there's anybody who is sort of a buy high candidate right now, it's Scheifele after what he's just accomplished. And if there's anybody that's a buy low candidate, it's Elias Paterson. There could be something around that would reset the Jets window. I think that's absurd. I don't think it's going to be within the realm of possibility, but I think the whole NHL is down on Elias Paterson right now. And if there is anything that can be done to sort of buy low on him, could be a smart thing to poke around at.
Yeah, that's interesting that someone would mention that. And you talked about Mark Scheifele. I don't think he's going anywhere. And I talk about the Jets making a trade. I don't think they're in a position to be trading they're going to look to trade any of their roster players who most of them they just signed in the last couple of years. But one thing that's interesting when you talk about signing players, you have Scheifele and Hellebuck making $8.5 million. How you look at playing fantasy hockey and talking about potential trades or signings? How long can you use that as an internal cap with the salary cap going up? I think it would be a mistake to, for them to say, hey, Nikolai Ehlers, sorry, you can't make more than these guys. I don't know if they're doing that or not, but I feel like that's something that gets brought up here on this show when we try to play pretend GM.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. And yeah, Scheifele is somebody who you build around, and same with Hellebuck. That's like the definition of their present window is these players. And when fans talk about contracts, they do so in dollars, right? 8.5, cool. That's a cap, don't go above it. Probably when players talk amongst themselves, some of them might use cap hit percentage, but most of them would also use dollars. Like I think 8.5, what they're making probably does feel like more of a ceiling than maybe it should be. Agents and GMs talking cap hit percentage a lot of the time anyways, they do. And the cap's just gone up. So if Ehlers makes, I think it's anywhere up to, I did the math, but I've forgotten it. But I think he can get into the low 9s and still earn less of a cap hit percentage than Scheifele and Hellebuck did when they signed their deals. So to my way of thinking, if they signed him at 8.75, right? Highest paid player on the team. That's crazy, right? He's not Scheifele, he's not Hellebuck. It would be a lower cap hit percentage. And for me, as I divide the pie up of Winnipeg Jets salaries, that's what I would go by. That's the swagger point. And I wouldn't think of it as an insult to Scheifele or Hellebuck at all, just a realistic reflection of the market that's out in front of them. I doubt that the Jets want to break that with Ehlers here and now, though. The player they will do that with is Kyle Connor, maybe as soon as this summer, but definitely they'll be making a heavy pitch for him as the year goes on.
Yeah, do players sit around and compare contracts and be like, hey, I got more than you, and the other guy's like, yeah, but my cap hit percentage was way bigger at the time it was signed, so do you think that kind of conversation happen at all, or is it just what we can talk about here?
I think that's for us. I doubt they're sitting there swinging sticks like that. Like, I think that, but internally we all have a sense of what we're worth, right? And like, in the NHL where it's all publicized, you're like, I'm better than that guy, right? Like that. These are competitive people. Like I should be worth more than that. And I don't know if it would hurt Hellebuck or Scheifele's sensibilities at all if Ehlers got 8.6, but it was a smaller cap hit or whatever. Or percentage, pardon me. But it is something that I think managers should think about. I don't think that that's the type of thing that should come between players and a contract.
Yeah, it's certainly interesting in the way that we've looked at contracts in the past, changing in the future with the rising salary cap, with free agency. We're probably going to see some big numbers headlined by Mitch Marner starting July 1. Murat, it's been great chatting with you, reading what you have at The Athletic, which I have done. Clicked on your name there. I type you into the search bar. Brings up all your work. It's fantastic. So I enjoy reading you, and thanks again for taking the time to come on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Remo. Thanks for piloting and co-piloting and doing all the things, man. It's been fun.
Appreciate it. There he is, Murat. Read him at The Athletic. He's on X, WPG Murat, for the latest, what he's talking about. Jets off season, Stanley Cup, didn't get too much in. I know in a past life, he was a big Oilers supporter. Didn't get into that. Maybe next week, because this Cup Final, it's June 4. I think Game 7, I know Game 7 would be June 20, because I checked the schedule, and June 19 is WST Night Out at the Gold Ice, and there is no conflict. No conflict. Last year we had guys and girls watching the games on their phone at the game, but that game only took it was 2 hours. Maybe we'll have a longer one this year. Talking about baseball, big baseball conversation coming up with Keegan Matheson of MLB.com. He's got a book out, The Franchise, Toronto Blue Jays, A Curated History of the Jays. I'll bring in Keegan shortly, but first, here's Huss.
Royal Sports has tons of new, many exclusive pieces of Bomber merch that you won't find anywhere else. Obviously, you've got all the Jets gear right now, a lot of it on sale. Tons of Major League Baseball, Blue Jays, NBA as well in the place. The biggest hockey section 12 months a year. But as we get into summer, soccer, baseball, softball, tennis, the biggest and best selection of athletic shoes you'll find anywhere, and tons of bikes as well, including e-bikes. So get on down to Royal Sports and get ready for summer. 750 Pembina Highway. Follow them on Instagram as well at Royal Sports Winnipeg. I should mention that Yeti section for everyone that's camping and heading to the beach. They have so many cool Yeti mugs, coolers, you name it. Another great thing to keep in mind before you head out of town over the course of this summer. Tomorrow night, it's game 1. Panthers, Oilers. Boston Pizza is the place to be with your gang for Stanley Cup playoff hockey. You got the game on all the screens with big sound, and of course, the BP playoff menu featuring the Canadian All-Star Poutine. Wing flights are back. They've got the Scoville Showdown for you crazies that love it hot, and a couple of amazing new pizzas for the playoffs, the Triple Pep and the Wingman Pizza as well. Pop down to Boston Pizza for game 1 of the playoffs. And hey, if you are staying at home, you can always get the great taste of BP and the new playoff menu by ordering online at bostonpizza.com. A big cheers to our friends at Winnipeg's favorite local brewery, Little Brown Jug.
You train day in and day out, learning new techniques, approaching new concepts, and living out the thrill of achieving your goals. Building a craft beer is no different. While you spend your hours on the ice, we spend ours here, brewing our trademark beer. Again, and again. Here's to pushing the status quo and challenging ourselves to build something memorable. 1919 by Little Brown Jug.
All right, the Toronto Blue Jays, well, they're in action this week at home. Hustler will be there tomorrow, but if you're looking for a book this summer and nothing better than curling up on the couch or outside at the beach or wherever by a lake and reading a nice book, and if you're looking to pick one up, then my next guest, Keegan Matheson, has won out. Again, the franchise, Toronto Blue Jays, a curated history of the Jays, and Keegan Matheson joins me right now. Keegan, congratulations on the book release. How are you feeling? And thanks for joining me.
Oh, thanks for having me, man. I'm feeling relieved. It's been a while, but a year and a half, maybe a little bit longer since I signed the deal for this book and got started on it. So at times it felt like this day would never come. I'm glad it has. This part's a lot more fun now that other people have gotten their hands on the book, and I've been overwhelmed by it, man. It's more than the 5 people I expected have bought it already. So it's going well. Really fun to be at this point, and a big relief finally.
Yeah, looking forward to diving in, and it seems like a lot of unique stories. But first, I have to ask you are with MLB.com covering the Jays on a daily basis. I mean, 31-29, they're hanging around the wild card, a couple more back of the division. But how would you grade their season so far compared to the expectations coming in?
They look okay. You know, they don't look great. They don't look terrible. They look okay. And okay can get you into a wild card spot, but I think the aim should be a little bit higher than that when you're spending this much money, and especially when the division is wide open like this. The American League is wide open this year, so they are doing enough so far. They need to play better than this if they want to do more than just make the wild card and lose 2 games again, which is what they've done the last 3 times they've made the wild card. So at this point, the Jays are at least doing enough to set themselves up for the trade deadline, and I think it's all about the trade deadline already at this point, almost 2 months away on July 31. And the Jays will have some obvious needs for a bat, bullpen, but I think really in the starting rotation at that point. If they can get there and make that the jumping off point, that's a good thing. But we need to see this team separate itself from 500 a bit. That 5-game win streak was a start for them against the A's. We'll see if that sustains itself, but a lot of highs, a lot of lows, and it's resulted in a team that's kind of hard to judge so far. It's been a strange season, but they've kept their heads above water so far.
A couple wins there and followed by a couple losses. I guess that's the making of a 500 team. You mentioned spending a lot of money. There was a lot of questions coming into the season about Vlad Guerrero Jr. and his future with the Jays. Now that's been determined and he's been locked up. I have to think that's huge for them going forward as they figure out the direction of this franchise.
Yeah, there's no more off-ramp anymore. That means they're going to spend no matter what. And that means a lot to free agents when they're looking at this team. If you were signing with a team when you're 32, 33 years old, it's probably the last big deal of your career. You want it to matter. You do not want to be stuck in an 80-win team kind of floating in the middle. With Vladdy locked up long-term, they're going to keep spending. And in 2026, next season and beyond, they'll have a lot of money coming off the books as well. In Bassett, in Scherzer, eventually in Gosman, potentially Barrios with his opt-out. A lot of those big money names come off the books. So there's room to spend. And if Vladdy had not extended, that would have been room kind of make a sharp turn, maybe rebuild. That doesn't happen anymore. If you have Vladdy locked up like this, if you have young players coming up, you keep spending. And I think the Jays, you can poke a lot of holes in this organization, but I don't think you can complain about the amount of money being spent at this point. They're spending money like never before, and it's time for that money to create a ball club that can get away from 500 a little bit. The pieces have not been there yet, but the encouraging part is that Vladdy changed everything. When you give a man $500 million, you're not going to play Moneyball around him. You're going to spend money, and I think they will continue to spend right around this range and maybe even grow as the years come.
Yeah, it seems like so many teams in the league are not spending money and not trying to win, and the Blue Jays certainly putting their best foot forward. And as what you said, a division that's more up in the air than we thought coming into this year, with Baltimore faltering and firing their manager last month, and the Rays not really having that season that they typically have, and the Red Sox as well, not quite at the Yankees level. So I'm curious to see how the trade deadline plays out and the rest of the season. But you do have the book out, the franchise, Toronto Blue Jays, a curated history of the Jays. What was the process like for you writing this book while covering them daily? Seems like some long hours in the past for you there.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it maybe in hindsight, but it seemed like a good idea at the time. So a lot of, at first I thought I could structure it well. And my first attempt was, okay, I'll write from 10 in the morning until 2 p.m. in the afternoon, and then I'll go to work. But then you add that up and it's a very long day. So it was a lot of just finding an hour here and there on airplanes, in bars, at hotels along the way, and chipping away at this. It started, I signed the deal for this book at the 2023 winter meetings, which people will remember as the Ohtani winter meetings in Nashville when all of that was breaking loose. And that's given me a year and a half from then until now, about a year of it spent writing it. A lot of that was time spent just deciding how to approach a book like this. This team's been around for 50 years. You can write a big 10,000-page boring book on the history of this team, but I decided to be a little more selective. And that's where this being a curated history really came in, and I think was beneficial because it allowed me to pick out some stories that do still cover all of the eras, but left some space for fresh stories that I've not put out in my coverage to date so far. With Ohtani, with the COVID years, with some athlete experiences around Toronto and their lives being famous in this city, what that means for players. So it's been very fun. There have been times in this process I probably would not have used the word fun to describe it, but now that it's over, I have such an appreciation for it, and covering the team this year feels lighter. I don't have the extra thing hanging on. I've compared it to like when guys are in the on deck circle swinging with the weighted bat. Now I have the weight off. I'm like, oh, all I have to do is cover the team. This is no problem now. So it's a little better this year.
Yeah, you mentioned the book covering beyond the usual storylines, some stories, and you mentioned the Ohtani. I saw there was an excerpt in the Toronto Star on that chapter. I remember we were doing our show, a lot of excitement following the plane and all that. What did you learn about the Jays' pursuit of Ohtani that surprised you? That's in the book. You don't want to give away the whole chapter, I know, but a little tease for our listeners and viewers.
Yeah, there's a lot of information in that chapter that had not been reported yet, and that's a nervous game too, because I wrote that chapter 8-9 months ago, and you never know if anything is going to sneak out before then. Thankfully not, I guess. But there is a lot of info in that chapter about what went into the Blue Jays' pursuit, what happened when Ohtani did visit them in Dunedin, and what was really happening through those days in December when it was such a mess, a dramatic mess on every front. A lot of that media driven by misreporting as well, and that created some real heartaches for fans, which not their fault. You're supposed to believe what is reported. So getting into that story and learning what actually happened, how it actually happened, made me appreciate that entire process, frankly, and what the Blue Jays put into it. I do not in any way think that they were used. I know that's a narrative that was out there. The Jays got used. That's little brother thinking, man. New York never says they were used. LA never says they were used. Toronto should not either. They had a legitimate shot to sign him. They just didn't. They came second. Nobody was used. And it gave me an appreciation for everything that went into the Blue Jays pitch to this guy, this generational, once-in-a-lifetime talent. And while you still have to categorize it as a loss because they didn't get the guy, I don't view it as a failure. At a certain point, you do all you can do. You get up to $700 million. You try everything you can try. And there's only so much you can do. You can't put Toronto in California, for example. That's a little hard geographically. So now that Vladdy has extended, I think that might change how some people view that chapter and view that story. Hopefully it's not as heartbreaking. But, man, it got all the way to the point. And I still remember that day, December 8th or 9th, whatever it was, 2023. I had the story ready on my laptop just in case, because, I didn't have any inside info beyond what was public at that point, but it seemed so close that I had to have a story ready. And I kept that story and I put it in the book. The Blue Jays have signed Shohei Ohtani for X years at X dollars. It was all ready so that if the news broke, I'd be able to have it live in 60 seconds. So that story, as it sat on my laptop that day, is in the book. And it's amazing how close it was. The entire process of reporting that chapter made me appreciate that it was close and that it was real. Nobody was getting used or screwed over. It was an honest pursuit that they just didn't close at the end. But the most interesting story I'll probably ever cover.
Yeah, we had a big bump here during that show. It was in December, following the plane and all the rumors flying around. Wow, what a day that was. Didn't come to fruition, but I'm looking forward to seeing that chapter in the book. The book, not the usual storylines, maybe some overlooked discussions, moments. Was there something that you learned that surprised you or that fans would be surprised by when picking up the franchise Toronto Blue Jays, a curated history of the Jays?
A lot of it for me was in getting to speak to players and broadcasters about kind of what their relationship with this city and this fan base has meant. In terms of new info, you'll get a lot of new info in the Ohtani chapter. I believe a lot of new stories in those COVID year chapters, some of the chapters about playing in Canada, playing in Toronto. A lot of those are fresh. But what surprised me compared to my day-to-day job was speaking to people like Carlos Delgado and Jose Bautista, John Gibbons, the great John Gibbons who wrote the foreword. People who I have been around but never had the opportunity to ask these questions to. The same goes for broadcasters. At the end of the book, I have a broadcast section. There's a chapter on Tom Cheek, Jerry Howarth, one on Allison Gordon, and then 2 chapters on Dan Schulman, Buck Martinez. Dan and Buck, I'm around every single day, all year. We have no shortage of time together. But when you're writing a book and writing a chapter on them, it gives you an excuse to sit down and say, hey, I'm going to ask you some stuff I normally wouldn't in the dining room at the stadium, right? So Buck especially was such a fun chapter to write because as anyone who watches Blue Jays baseball knows, the man can tell a story and has an incredible memory for his career through baseball. And just learning about all of the small things that happened to lead us here. Buck told a great story about how in 81, before he was traded to the Jays, the Yankees had a deal in place for him. It just didn't go through with the Brewers. Imagine if that had happened. Is Buck could be managing the Yankees. He could be selling real estate in New York right now, but he would never be the voice of the Blue Jays or one of the most important people in this franchise's history, who I think belongs in the level of excellence. So learning about those little things that almost happened to bring us to where we are today, pretty cool, and the opportunity to talk to players in a way you normally wouldn't, because I'm not writing a quick story about a win or a loss that day. I'm writing something bigger, and people were very generous with their stories for that.
Yeah, Buck Martinez has been with the Blue Jays for a long time as a broadcaster, but also a player and a manager as well. I'm sure had tons of great insight. And it's aside from Buck Martinez, who you mentioned, but a lot of other franchise icons mentioned in the book: Roy Halladay, Carlos Delgado, but Jose Bautista, who's franchise icon, home run leader. Remember the bat flip home run as well, but didn't start that way. When he was acquired, you referred to him as unremarkable. I mean, how did he turn into the player that he did, and what stood out to you when putting together the piece on Jose Bautista?
Yeah, I remember finding that in a Toronto Star newspaper archive, and he didn't even get his own story that day. And I remember this because there was a typo. It said the Americana, AMERICNA, Americana League transaction log. And it just said Jose Bautista acquired for player to be named later. That was it. It was in little size 2 font under a typo in the Toronto Star that day. Whatever. It's just another guy. And at the time, Jose Bautista was just another baseball player. He had not really stuck anywhere. He'd bounced around. He had a little bit of power. He could play a couple corner positions, but he was unspectacular. There was nothing wow worthy about him. And the Blue Jays picked him up really just to cover a short-term need. I think they had an injury at the time. They needed a guy just to fill a hole in a season that wasn't really going anywhere. And that's why Jose is so special, because while he started his career elsewhere for quite a while, he represents someone who came to be in Toronto. He blossomed here, and then he embraced the city. This was a city desperate to be embraced, especially in baseball, coming off such a long time since 92, 93 in those World Series wins. You had the Delgado and the Holiday eras, but there weren't extra wildcard spots then. They didn't have the postseason runs, the postseason success. Bautista represented not just a shift in success, but a shift in attitude. There's no experience like interviewing Jose Bautista. He's in full control of the conversation, and if you slip up one word, one premise, you're toast. It's done. There's no experience like it, and I love it. He is a one-of-a-kind personality. He is still as confident now as he was when he was hitting 54 homers. He has not lost a bit of that edge. And that's why he's an all-timer, because he represented so much more than just himself as a baseball player. And he's now the reason that every time the Blue Jays make a waiver claim or trade cash considerations for a guy, and 100 people say, oh, it's a dumpster dive, this is just another bum. Well, 990 times out of 100, probably. But every once in a while, you find Jose Bautista, and that's what makes this so exciting.
Yeah, Jose Bautista up there, as you mentioned, with the Blue Jays legends. And I was reading your AMA on Reddit, Keegan, in your promotion. You mentioned the Sky Dome. Your perspective kind of changed since writing the book. I don't think of the Sky Dome today as anything that spectacular when you look at some of the great stadiums around baseball. But when it was built, it was a technological marvel, wasn't it?
It was. And I spend so much time there now, and it's 35 years old. I spend so much time in it that I had gotten to a place where I'm just like, I hate this place. Playing under this roof, you feel like you're playing underground in a mine. I got cranky with Sky Dome. And working on this chapter made me appreciate it so much more. Number one, that roof is one of the most important things in my life, saving me from rain delays. When we are on the road covering the Blue Jays and there's a rain delay, I think, what the hell are we doing here? Build a roof, And 81 games a year where I don't have to worry about rain is a blessing. That saves me entire days off my life. But going back to through the mid-'80s, building it into 89 when it opened, actually just the anniversary of yesterday, I believe, June 3rd, when it opened in 89, it was so eye-opening in terms of how spectacular a building this was at the time. And it's really held up. the reason that they continue to renovate it instead of blowing it up is because it's very well built, and it's usually about the unexciting stuff like the electrical, the plumbing, the foundation. All of that's rock solid. Like, they did a really good job building this stadium. But the retractable roof, the hotel with the restaurant looking in, the big screen, which has gotten a little nicer over the years, it's spectacular. And the location, more than anything, is its greatest gift. Every time I go to a road city and I'm out off the highway where the land was cheap and there's a stadium, that doesn't do it for me. But being able to walk out of that stadium and be right in downtown Toronto, whether you want to hop on the train at Union Station or whether you live in one of these condo buildings, it's a very unique experience. And it helped me appreciate that when the building was built, it was not just for function, but they wanted it to have some artistic merit. Like, they wanted it to be a beautiful building that really leaned into being grand and being special and new. And to come from Exhibition Stadium, which was a bit of a dump, a charming dump, but a dump, it was as big a leap as you can probably ever imagine in pro sports. It was absolutely unbelievable.
Can't wait to read it, Keegan. And as we wind this down, was there something that we haven't mentioned yet that stood out to you when putting this together, that when someone reads it, they're going to think, wow, I didn't really know that?
It's a good question. I think going back through those fresh chapters I mentioned earlier, a lot of stuff about the COVID years was really fun to revisit. And that's stuff that I wanted to it's kind of freezing time for myself as much as anything. So I can look back on that in 10 years and remember how weird those times were for players. But for me, down in the United States, covering this team and getting my brain poked every day for testing to be around these players, trying not to be the guy who screwed it all up, then I would never have been allowed back in Canada. But going through these chapters was just a really special way for me to help understand the relationship, I think, between different eras of fans. I'm of the era where I was alive, barely, for the 92 and 93 World Series. I'm 34, but I don't remember them, and I can't claim to. And we're getting to a point where half of Blue Jays fans, anyone under 38, 39, 40 years old, yeah, you might have been around, but I doubt you remember much what those moments meant. So those are getting further and further away. And this helped me, I think, realize what matters to different eras of fans. It helped me realize why fans a little older than me will talk your ear off about Dave Stieb, George Bell, and those teams of the 80s. I loved writing the Dave Stieb chapter. I'm fascinated by Dave Stieb. But it helped me appreciate why this team matters to different eras of fans, different ages of fans. And it helped me appreciate that if a player hits a home run at the right time, the whole world changes. If the Blue Jays can find a way to go on a run this year, and their number 7 or 8 hitter hits a home run at the right time to win a series, that lasts forever. And if that happens, then the last 8-9 years that I've covered of disappointing teams, suddenly that looks like the buildup. It's no longer the disappointment. So you can really rewrite history with one of those moments, which I learned covering those 92 and 93 seasons, even 15 and 16, going to the ALCS. You can really rewrite a lot of things. And that's kind of changed how I look at this team. Yeah, it's been disappointing. They've spent a ton of money to get nowhere lately. But if Vladdy hits a home run at the right time, if Kevin Gausman throws a complete game shutout at the right time, we change how we look at all of this forever.
Well said, Keegan. I think we experienced that here in Winnipeg with the Game 7 Jets Blues. That's a memory here that I think fans will be talking about for years. And I'm still talking about the 2015 ALCS. Drove down to Kansas City for, was it Game 2? Was the dropped fly ball and the David Price start. I was in the building for that. It was a great experience. And one player mentioned Carlos Delgado. Will he ever get some respect and get into the Hall of Fame? I can't believe he was off the ballot after one season. What a travesty.
Yeah, I hope so, man. I wish he had it was a hip injury late in his career. I wish he had played 1 year more, started 1 year, got that 500 home run mark. He's just shy, and that would have changed a lot. But he was also in that era of PED use and those sluggers. And he was the guy that was clean, never tested, never had a connection to any of that. But when you're in an era of numbers being put up by those guys, it's tough too. The fact he fell off the ballot after a year is criminal. And I I have a lot of opinions about writers voting for the Hall of Fame, but that's a negative one for me. So I hope that the eras committees, as they revisit these things, can look at him again, because a spectacular baseball player who also did not benefit from playing in Toronto in that era of baseball, where they weren't exactly on Sunday Night Baseball every week, So completely deserving of a longer look, and that's one I would go to bat for hard.
Me too. I don't just to be off after 1 year was, as you said, criminal. And Keegan, it's been great having you on the show, connecting your work, MLB.com, excellent. And the book, The Franchise, Toronto Blue Jays, A Curated History of the Jays, out now. Thank you so much for taking the time, and great having you on the show.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you for having me.
There he is, Keegan Matheson. Thanks so much for Keegan, or thanks so much to Keegan for taking the time to join me here today, Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. And shout out to Running Man, says he's going to go pick up the book after the show. So many great memories following the Blue Jays. Haven't had, throughout the summers, haven't had that, postseason success in the last 10 years, but with a wide open East Division this year, except for the Yankees seem to have first place locked up. Maybe we'll see some playoff success this year. I'm going to bring Connor Hrabchak back here in a second as we continue to discuss the Stanley Cup Final today, and we'll go through the Coolbet Lines, but we have to give a couple shout-outs here. And Hustler at the RBC Canadian Open this weekend, and all of our WST golf reports brought to you by Breezy Bend, home of this year's Manitoba Open. Thinking about making Breezy your long-term golf home? Contact Corey Johnson at the clubhouse or visit breezybend.ca for more info and to get on that waiting list. I'm looking forward to seeing that hole that they have the hockey on. Isn't that their special hole there at the Canadian Open? Will we see a Canadian win again this year like Nick Taylor did before? And I did see Rory McIlroy got presented a Leafs jersey and said, hey, if I can win the Masters, maybe the Leafs could win the Stanley Cup. We'll see about that one, Rory. And shout out to the Winnipeg Goldeyes back at home this week. Great chance to get out to the ballpark. A series finale tomorrow versus Kane County. Weekend series with Kansas City. Friday night, fireworks, and Sunday is the Manitoba Baseball Hall of Fame game with lots of great activities for families looking to take mine out to a game to experience Blue Cross Park. And yes, tickets 204-982-BASE. And also note, WST patio party at the ballpark Thursday, June 19. Under 20 tickets remaining. If you haven't secured yours yet, go to winnipegsportstalk.com, click on the link up top, grab your spot. We'll see you, Thursday, June 19th there. But hey, if you can't make it then, perfect week to catch a game if you haven't yet this season. Let's bring on Connor Hrabchak right now. Connor, you're there? Oh, one sec. Let me bring you in. Hold on. I don't have you in fully. All right, go ahead. You are here.
I am here. I enjoyed those conversations there, especially with Murat, always an awesome guest with the Jets talk, of course, and Paul LaPolice, head coach, Canada, flag football. I'm a flag football player myself. So that is going to be cool to see that in the Olympics. And I'm not playing for Team Canada. I'm not that good at flag football, but I have played the sport and it's very fun.
I never played flag football. I don't think it was really a thing when I was growing up. We played at recess. We played like touch football, 2-hand touch, 1-hand touch. I never put on the flags. It seems pretty cool though.
Yeah, it's fun. It's and for most like parents, it's a great way to get your kid into football without the contact that comes with tackle football, of course. But even, I played it in high school when I was playing, and it's just a fun sport. It's different from regular tackle football in enough ways, and there's different strategy involved in it as well. And it's whether we were playing outside, I played some games at Princess Auto Stadium as well. Kind of the championship weekend would always be there. So it was a very fun sport to get into with me and my friends there, and highly recommended to people who haven't played it.
Very nice, Connor. Time to pull up the Coolbet Lines. Looking forward to tonight. Game 1, Stanley Cup Final. Panthers, Oilers. Oilers minus 120 favorites. And if you want to look at the series, pretty much the same. Oilers minus 128 for the series as well. Bit of a surprise. I actually think there's might be some value there on the Panthers, as I don't want to say painful, because I don't know if I'm going to feel strongly one way or another, but I'd like to see McDavid. I don't want to see McDavid hoisting the Conn Smythe 2 years in a row as a loser in the most depressing picture. I don't want to see that, Connor. Although he didn't come out last year, so there wasn't a picture.
Right. But I get what you're saying there. And look, maybe there is a little bit of value on Florida there as an underdog, given how they've played, especially in the Eastern Conference Finals. I could see that. As for tonight's game, the Oilers are at home. They have home ice advantage in this year's series. That's something they didn't have in last year's series. So you see them as a favorite here. I'm sure Florida will be the favorite going into Game 3 when they have home ice advantage as well. That's a big thing in this series, and Edmonton finally has it this year. It's another thing they didn't have last year, as well as depth scoring up front, which is we've talked about already.
Yeah, we mentioned the player specials. First player to receive the Stanley Cup handoff, Nugent Hopkins, is the favorite, and the Oilers player is Nuge, and Schmidt is the first player for Florida. Very surprising that it would be Nate Schmidt. I don't know, maybe Aaron Ekblad. He's been a Panther for a long time. Could be some value on that, but you could also you could bet this all bets, or it would be void if that team loses. So certainly interesting the way that they've structured this. If you want to go to off-season specials, which team will Jonathan Toews sign his next contract with, Connor? The Jets are the favorite here, plus 250. The Avs, plus 350. Maple Leafs, plus 500. Golden Knights, 500. Oilers, plus 1,200. Lightning, Red Wings, Blackhawks, Ducks, Rangers. You got a feeling on this Jonathan Toews next contract?
I don't. I mean, I'm not shocked whatsoever to see the Jets as the favorite, especially given Pierre LeBrun and Darren Dreger both had tweets saying that, the Jets showed interest back in February when they were talking, and the Jets would be at the front of the line and things of that nature. So I'm not surprised that the Jets are the favorite. As for the other teams like Colorado, we talked about how they're up against the cap. I don't know if that changes much. Toronto, I could see definitely. Edmonton, if he's trying to win a Stanley Cup starting next season, go for the team that's in the Stanley Cup Finals right now. But yeah, not shocking to see the Winnipeg Jets as favorites, at least in my opinion. I don't know what you think, Remo.
Yeah, I think Colorado. I wonder if that changes now they got Brock Nelson locked up. If you're looking for opportunity, certainly there with the Jets. Don't really have a bona fide second-line center. Adam Lowry's out to start the year. Maple Leafs, will wait and see what happens with John Tavares. Does he come back? Golden Knights, they seem to be in on just about everyone. We mentioned Nikolai Ehlers earlier. We'll get to this Mitch Marner prop. And Lightning, they just signed Yanni Gourde to a big deal. I don't know. Is there room for him there? Red Wings, do you want to play with a team, contender like the Jets? The Red Wings haven't been in the playoffs for a while now. They're trying to get over that hump. It's definitely not back with the Blackhawks. And I'm curious about Ducks. I think they're going to try to be a player this offseason. They've taken some steps forward. Do they finally trade John Gibson now that Dostal has emerged as a goalie? Leo Carlson's looking like a pretty good player as well. And I think the Rangers are going to be a team that's in on a lot of players as well. There's the Kings, Panthers, Stars down there. Mitch Marner, what team's he going to sign with? The Kings, the favorite, plus 450. Golden Knights, plus 500. Leafs, plus 6. Hurricanes plus 650. One team we have not discussed is Utah Mammoth. They got a name now. How active is Utah going to be? And then you have some of these bottom feeder teams like the Blackhawks, Sharks, Ducks, Blue Jackets, Flyers. What's your lean on Mitch Marner?
I like the Kings, obviously, as the favorite to land him, but Utah, you brought them up there. I like them as a bit of an off the board ish pick. If you really want to go value, I could see Anaheim, even though they're not good, like going from the biggest market in the NHL to probably like the least media coverage in the NHL, going from the Leafs to the Ducks. If Mitch Marner really doesn't like media coverage, and that's solely driving this decision, but Utah, I think, is really going to be a player. They have a lot of cap space. Mitch Marner, obviously going to a new franchise like that. They have some skilled players. They're right on the playoff line. They just missed the playoffs this year. So I could see Utah being a player for Mitch Marner, but I think the Kings are rightfully the favorite because if I had to bet on one team where he's going, I would say the Kings as of today.
Yeah, we're again less than a month away to July 1. There's going to be some big names changing teams, and we haven't seen that for a couple of years. And you hear NBA final. You see, I love the Stanley Cup Final, NBA Finals. Well done, Coolbet. But the favorite here is OKC. Just massive favorite over Indiana. Canadian Open, Hustlers there. Favorite to win is Rory McIlroy plus 450. Aberg plus 1,400. Corey Connors plus 2,000. Shane Lowry 2,200. Taylor Pendrith 2,600. So a few Canadians up there in the top 5. We'll see what happens here. I'm looking forward to the Canadian Open this weekend. U.S. Open next weekend. So a couple big tournaments on the horizon. MLB, Blue Jays in action against the Phillies. That is tonight. Pretty even. Blue Jays minus 104. Phillies minus 112. Well, Connor got big Stanley Cup plans tonight. Big watch party plan. You going to kick up and watch it or maybe tune in third period if it's close? Pretty nice weather outside. It's tempting to want to get out there.
Yeah, that is true. I will say I got to give a shout out to WSD listener Sean, who plays Ultimate Frisbee. I played against him last week. Their team beat us, but I play Rec Ultimate Frisbee every Wednesday night, Rima. So I'll be missing the first 2 periods of tonight's game. I'll have to rewatch it, and I'll be watching the third. So I'm hoping that when I tune in the third period, it's a 1-1 game, and I haven't missed a thing, right? But yeah, shout out to WSD listener Sean, who I played in Ultimate Frisbee, Rec Ultimate Frisbee Wednesday nights. Played him last week. They won. It was a tough game, but yeah, I'll be tuning in later tonight. Hopefully it's a close game in the third.
Connor, you're a big deal getting recognized in Ultimate Frisbee now that you're being a big part of WST,
cool.
Right?
Oh, exactly. That's, you grow up hoping and dreaming that you one day get recognized at an Ultimate Frisbee game. That's the dream.
Oh, and it's your boy Bruce says Connor has Mission Impossible movies to watch from the start of the show. You're just passing. You just watched 3, right? And there's like 7 or 8 now.
I just watched. I watched 3, and I watched Rogue Nation, which is technically 4. Or sorry, Ghost Protocol, which is technically 4. My next one on the list is Rogue Nation, which is 5, and then Fallout 6, and on we go. But I'm powering through these Mission Impossible movies.
Ethan Hunt. I never saw the past. I think I watched the 3rd one. I just like when they had the number in the name. Like I can't.
Mm-hmm.
I got 3, and then Ghost Protocol I never saw, and Rogue Nation, Fallout, Dead Reckoning, and now this new one is the Final Reckoning. I haven't seen it. So we'll see. Maybe Hustler and I didn't talk about this. The movie that I do want to go out to the theater for that I can't. Happy Gilmore 2. Not a theater release, Netflix only. And I miss the days of going to a theater and laughing out loud with everyone there. Now I got to sit at home alone watching Netflix for Happy Gilmore 2. I thought the trailer looked excellent. Normally these comedy sequels suck. I could give a list of comedy sequels that I never saw. But I think I'm going to be watching this one day one.
Me too. And I'm a big theater fan. I love going to the movies, love, getting the popcorn and getting the large drink and all that, like the experience that comes with a movie theater. I agree with you, Remo. I was disappointed when it's a Netflix release. Like I'm just gonna be watching it by myself, or maybe WST watch party, Happy Gilmore 2.
Yeah,
Gonna
everyone
have to organize that.
somehow organize it, rent out a theater, and stream it on Netflix. Man, can I do that? Can I bring my own like Fire Stick and plug in Netflix into a theater? Is that a thing? You
gotta find out.
Let me know. If I can arrange that, someone pull some strings, we can set up a theater screening of Happy Gilmore 2. Here, we're going to wrap up the show. We got to get to the Assiniboia Downs picks. Couple great nights this week. We had Monday, Tuesday, live racing and Assiniboia Downs. It's open every day with VLTs, great dining options, free admission, and free parking. And if you're going to attend live race nights, make a reservation in the clubhouse dining room. Enjoy the world-famous prime rib buffet. Make a night of it. And don't forget, make your picks on HPI Bet. You can watch them on YouTube. I love putting on the YouTube stream. Kirk, Stretch, giving you the picks before. And we're just getting started here on racing season. And I got my picks for tonight. Hustler has got his too. We both went 0 for yesterday. And I will give my selections here. I'm on race 4, 5, 6, 7. Race 4, 2-4 Exacta. That's not the right thing. 2-4 Exacta. Ratliff City. And what's the other one? Black Tekka. Race 5. Horse 5 to win. That's Half in the Wrapper. There you go. Race 6. A trifecta box. 3, 5, 6. Lemon Twist. Kentucky Jake. Silver Blur. Going for a bit of a longer shot there with Kentucky Jake. Got to catch Hustler. He's had some big winners. Me, more of a singles kind of guy when it comes to making horse picks. And race 7, horse 4, McGill to win. Those are my horse picks for Assiniboia Downs last night this week of live racing. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, and select Mondays this summer. Connor, I think that we've said it all at this point, right? We've touched on it. The Jets off season. We did have some news yesterday with Kupari. Stanley Cup Final. Game 1 tonight. CFL kicking off tomorrow. I guess NBA Finals is tomorrow as well. But thanks a lot,
Nice.
Connor. It's been great having you on the show, and good luck trying to finish all the Mission Impossibles.
Thank you. Yeah. Someone in chat, I should bring it up, but they said, I haven't watched any of the Mission Impossible movies, but they all seem pretty possible. And yeah, let me tell you, in short, watching only the first couple, it's pretty funny, like watching, knowing that he'll get out alive from this miraculous, impossible mission that he's facing. But thank you. Going to be watching the rest of those over the course of the Stanley Cup Final here. When there's not a game on, and looking forward to chopping it up with you tomorrow, breaking down what happens in game 1 and Friday as well, as the CFL season gets underway.
Yeah, big week, as you mentioned, with the Stanley Cup Final, NBA Finals, and CFL. Week 1, we didn't even go over the lines. We'll touch on that tomorrow. Futures picks. If you missed all that, CFL 110 on this channel on YouTube, or on podcast Hustler and Jeff Hamilton with the top storylines. The first pod of the year, second one, more predictions, week 1. Look ahead. Put your final predictions in chat. Everyone, thanks so much for coming on. If you made it this far to the end of the show, please hit the like button on this video. Subscribe to our channel. It tells YouTube we're putting out some great content. Maybe it'll show it to more people, and it also notify you. If you hit that little notification bell when we go live or when we put out videos. So thanks everyone for tuning in. We're great talking. All right, everyone. Bye-bye.
Oh my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.